On today's episode of the SPIMA Council podcast, we had on Paul Wilderman, a digital content specialist in marketing at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Before I get into the Cliffs Notes version of the episode, I want to give a huge shout out to our co-host this week, Amanda Benitez. Amanda's been wanting to come on the show for a while now, and it was awesome to finally get her on and co-host this great episode. She did an awesome job, and she was here for an episode that was just unbelievable to do. So big props to Amanda for that. But with Paul, we covered a lot of stuff. We covered his tenure at George Brown College for Business Administration and Ryerson University for Entrepreneurship and how that led to sport. We covered his internship or start with MLSE with TFC and TFC2, and talked about some of the skills that he learned there. We talked about his tenure with the Toronto Argonauts as a special products coordinator, and talked a bit about his role as a digital content specialist as well. More importantly, though, we talked about his article that he published on the Argonauts site that told about his career in sport, including his story on living with autism. And personally, this was huge to do for me because I actually am on the autism spectrum like Paul. I mentioned this a few times in the show, if I'm being completely honest. So if this message sounds repetitive, because it's already been said, I apologize. But I think this is the first time that I've actually mentioned it publicly. When it's hard to describe, but when you encounter a person who can relate exactly to the things that you go through, and autism is a weird thing where you go through a lot of stuff, it is absolutely mind-blowing, no hyperbole. And his story is amazing. His comments about including autistic people in the workplace are 100% valid. I encourage you to listen to every part of this interview because it was an absolute pleasure to conduct, and I hope that you share that same sentiment. And with that, let's head over to this week's episode. We hope you enjoy this week's edition of the SPIMA Council podcast. How's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. And you know what time it is. I invite you to pull up a chair, sit back and relax, and welcome you to yet another episode of the SPIMA Council podcast. Hope everyone's having a great week. It's going to be an awesome episode this week. As we're now in mid-March, and at the time of this episode, St. Paddy's Day has passed. So hope everyone had a wonderful St. Paddy's Day. Hopefully the luck of the Irish was with you on the Thursday or on the Saturday, whichever day you're celebrating St. Paddy's. But on to business now. Introducing our guest co-host. She's been wanting to get on the show for a long time. We finally got her on. Amanda Benitez. Amanda Benitez, how's it going?
Awesome. It's going great. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. And you were in for an awesome episode today. We were with Paul Wilderman, who is a digital content specialist at MLSE. Had a lot of great things to say. So just to start off, Amanda, what was some of the few standout moments of the show for you? If you had to pick maybe one or two.
That's a hard question. Like, he said a lot of good stuff, but one thing was when he mentioned his internship and like the things he learned and how like he carried them on till now, especially like how I liked how he said, just enjoy the moment. Like, even though like
Exactly.
you're not gonna, who knows if you can get a full-time job after, or if this internship can lead you to so many other places. But I really liked how you just said enjoy it, especially like I'm in like second year, but like just enjoy everything, like enjoy your lectures, like you're not going to be in this forever. So that's pretty
Mhm.
special.
Mhm. And another thing I guess that stood out to me was his upbringing into the sport industry. It wasn't traditional. It's sort of it sort of came it sort of came almost on a whim because his undergraduate degrees were from George Brown in a mainly business format, and Ryerson for entrepreneurship. But as he said, it's a great example of knowing people in the sport industry beforehand, which he said he helped them. And again, we've heard this many times. Your network is your net worth. Pretty sure if you haven't heard people say that in networking conferences, then you probably will some point down the line. Apologies for that noise 30 seconds ago. That was my pen flying across the room for no apparent reason. Who knows why? Another thing is he talks about his tenure with MLSE. But a great thing to look at is his flexibility when he was moved into a role that maybe didn't align with his skill set, but he stuck with it until he got a promotion to a role that fit his own personal niche.
For sure. And I like how like, not everything's gonna be perfect at first. It's not, you plan everything at first. But he like he said, like ticket and sales wasn't for him, and like he found something after that, like he knew people. So I think that's what we all can learn from, like networking and knowing people along the line and just experiencing everything, just knowing what you do and don't like.
Yeah. And the final thing that I'll mention before I spoil the whole friggin' show, he does go into detail about his journey with autism, which is fascinating. It's the later portion of the show, but if you're gonna tune into anything, tune into that because it is nuts. And again, I mentioned this in the show. I haven't admitted this publicly. I also have autism like Paul, and let me tell you, it is a battle every day to live with it. Some days aren't perfect, and you get a bit of clarity as to what it's like to live with the disorder, even though it may not seem as evident on the outside. So it's gonna be a great show. We hope you enjoy. And with that, let's send it over to Paul Wilderman, a digital content specialist in marketing with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. All right, for this edition of the SPIMA Council podcast, we have an exciting guest onto the show. He has spent most of his career in the sports industry with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Some of the roles include an analytics intern for TFC, a special projects coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts, and now a digital content specialist. Aside from his work responsibilities, he's been a constant advocate of sharing what it's like to live on the autism spectrum. Please welcome to the show at this time, Paul Wilderman. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, my man.
Thank you, William. The pleasure is all mine. And thank you for, Brock Sports Management Council for having me on this evening. It's a pleasure to be a part of this podcast and to talk about my career in sports and living with autism.
Not a problem. Let's get right into it with the de facto first word of the SPIMA Council podcast. Paul, what mindset have you adopted to forge a successful career?
Great question, William. My mindset is always to just have a positive mindset and to have a never give up kind of attitude, and just to always like do your best, and never work hard, and be resilient, and always and most of all, I would say, is to be confident and believe in yourself, because dreams can always come true. You can create your own destiny. You just have to believe strongly that you're able to do it, and it's not impossible as we had previously talked about, but it is it's very, very it's difficult sometimes, and especially when you live with like autism, like myself. I mean, you have to work a little bit harder, but at the end of the day, like the rewards can always be greater. So that's my mindset to forge a successful career, and don't be afraid to fail. At the end of the day, it's always about if you get knocked down,
100%.
just about getting back up, again and again.
Sure. For sure. Perfect. So, our second question is, before your tenure at MLSC, you attended George Brown College for Business Administration and Ryerson University for Entrepreneurship. So were there any skills or learning points that you took from there that motivated you to go to sports-centric direction for your career?
So when I went to George Brown, I went for business administration. Sports was not necessarily my thought at that initial time. Same case with Ryerson, with entrepreneurship. I didn't necessarily consider heading into sports. I always knew I liked sports, and I was always a fan. And I just knew that the window of opportunity was desperately narrow, and I decided I was, I would try to get into the industry via connections. As far as skills that I developed at George Brown, I developed team skills and interpersonal relationships, strategies. I learned how to become more organized, and to plan my schedules, and most of all, learn a post-secondary education. I mean, lots of my skills in marketing were taught there, and my writing skills were definitely taught in my research report writing class I took about 10 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but I definitely find that was the origins of my writing skills, and how they started to reach their peaks and everything. So but really, it was, I mean, I went there for business, and for entrepreneurship at both George Brown and Ryerson, but I wasn't going to necessarily get into, a business. And I kind of realized after Ryerson that entrepreneurship was not necessarily for me. Now, having said that, you don't need a degree or a diploma to be an entrepreneur. Anybody could be an entrepreneur, Charles Bronson for Virgin. He dropped out of school, and then he became a billionaire, aviation expert. And even Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard, and went on to be the CEO of Facebook. I think he went back to Harvard later on to finish his degree, from what I understand. But that's my knowledge of his story. So really, you it's about having connections, and you learn. The reality is you learn more when you enter the real world, or in this case, professional sports like I entered into. And thankfully I had connections to Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, well, the Argos at the time, that is, to become hired, and as a special projects coordinator. And I got into MLSC first as a TFC 2 intern, and then I later on went to the Argonauts, and then now I'm in MLSC.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting, path the industry. Didn't really have sports on the radar at first, but then it just sort of opened up, and that's the funny thing about 2, 3, 4 years down the line, you have no idea what's gonna happen. Even today, you probably don't even know what's gonna happen in 6 months. So first, there's that pivot from from a field that is related to sport, but then you're able to find your true passion in this in sport business, while carrying those skills from George Brown and Ryerson along the way. And you did touch on it a few minutes ago. You took on an internship with TFC and TFC2. You conducted a research for both clubs and assisted with game operations during TFC2 home matches. If any, what are some of the transferable skills that you took as an intern that you still use today in your career? And this might be particularly relevant to fourth year SPEMA students that are completing their doing their internships for the winter semester.
Yeah, I took a lot of skills from my internship. I mean, my primary, I think, skills I developed was to, network and establish, new connections, and meeting people within the sports industry and outside the sports industry too. I always go to like networking events and conferences, like, whether it's related from like work or if it's like not related to work, to meet people. I mean, I'm a very social and extroverted person. I like to get myself out there and meet people from different professions and different backgrounds, different cultures, and like different countries. Like it's because that's how you grow, is when you have interactions with people. And so that's a really key interpersonal skill that I learned from my internship, carrying over to MLSE. I also learned that you have to have a really like proper work ethic when you go into the industry, and you want to be like poised and composed and confident. That's confidence is always key, as I might have touched on a little earlier in this conversation. And most of all, with you have a like I also touched on, is a positive mindset, and you want to have a culture in the industry, and build a culture within your peers, your co-workers, your clients, and and most of all the fans, of course, too. You want to build a culture with like the fans, and that's kind of our job at TFC2, and what I learned in the internship, and to just and most of all, enjoy it, because you may never get that opportunity again in your life. I mean, if you don't have like, some just get an internship but don't necessarily get a full-time opportunity. Thankfully, in my case, I was able to get a full-time opportunity with the Argonauts afterwards, and then later on MLSE.
You make a great point on work ethic. It sounds like the simplest thing, but there is a rude awakening when you transition from the lecture halls to the office. And as the old saying goes, you're doing 100 things at once, and you have to adapt on the fly, because there's customers that are looking for a superior experience from your product. There's revenue goals to be made, and there's goals that need to be achieved. So unless you're not coming into the office with a dedicated drive to put in the work, be prepared to fail if need be, and grow as a professional, then the internship experience simply isn't beneficial. I tell you, I mean, I at the time of this recording, I just came home from a work day with my intern organization, the Niagara River Lions. We were probably making upwards of like 30, 40, could be more, 30, 40 calls, could be more, to businesses, just out of the blue, cold calling to see if they wanted group tickets. And you had to have that. And throughout those multiple calls, you had to have the focus to sell the product, because there's goals to be achieved, and every business, no matter what type of sport, is always pushing for new revenue streams, and having a good work ethic to achieve those goals is a huge foundation towards success in that area for sure. And just enjoying it. I mean, look at people get so friggin' caught up in oh, I have to get this mark, oh, I have to get this and this. And too often we get caught up on it, and it's really worthwhile to step back and take a moment to reflect on the fact that you're in this experience. It's a great time because you want to be here. So you might as well enjoy the time. So you might as well enjoy the time that you have there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's key, is to step back, and reflect, and you don't want to get so caught up. A lot of people, especially in the sports industry, get caught up and obsessed with like their positions, particularly when it comes to ticket sales and service. Some people, are like, some of them make commission, and they, have certain goals to reach, and definitely understand where they come from 100%. But also, like mental health, plays a big factor, too, when it comes to working in sports or any, industry. And it's, been a topic of conversation in today's society.
Yeah, for sure. That was great. Like, I'm a second year sport management student. So like hearing Will, your experiences, and yours too, Paul, it's really inspirational. I could take that, and many other students can take that along the way too. So moving on to our next question. So immediately after the internship, you transitioned over to type of football, CFL to be specific, and worked with the Toronto Argos as a special products coordinator, first in marketing, then in ticket sales and services. So what was it like to participate in activities such as creating content and generating ticket leads in order to enhance the Argo brand in spite of the ultra competitive downtown sports market?
Great question, Amanda. First of all, I was in the Argonauts for marketing. I didn't necessarily do any ticketing work. I will get to that part in a little bit when I get to the MLSE part. As far as the Argos go, most of my first year I was working on online photographs, editing Dropbox pictures from our games. I was doing statistics at the Argos games at BMO Field. It was our first year at BMO, so stakes were high. We were hosting the Grey Cup that year in 2016. It didn't necessarily go too well for us. We had 5 wins. But the Grey Cup was a lot of fun. I worked the festival. I got to hand out flyers with one of my colleagues, and it was really a cool experience to be a part of that. The city was buzzing, and it was happening at a time when the Leafs and the Raptors and the Blue Jays had their playoff run, and you even had the World Cup of Hockey that year, which everyone forgets about now, because it was basically a marketing gimmick, and no one really remembers it. I happened to be at the USA Canada game that year, and it was pretty exciting to see. So that was 2016. But come 2017, the following year, and it was also around the time that I first moved downtown, so it was a big step up for me in my personal life. I had lived in downtown Toronto, at the Port York and Bathurst area. I lived in a very high-rise condo, and now I'm living in a lovely low floor unit condominium that I now own. And
very nice.
5.5 years that I lived downtown, so I owe that 2016 year to that decision that I made. In 2017, I began to focus more on my writing skills. I published articles based on game day themes from the Argos, and it was really an opening experience as I focused on Canadian Armed Forces Night, breast cancer awareness month. I did the fan experience at BMO, and that was the year that the Argos won the Grey Cup in Ottawa in November, late November 2017. That was the most surreal experience of my life. I even have my Grey Cup ring on my finger to show the
Not
audience
a big deal.
from
Wow.
that year.
I think that is the first ever championship ring appearance on the SPIMA Council podcast. Mark it in your calendars. Monumental moment in the show's history. That ring's a beauty, I tell you.
I am truly honored to hear that. Absolutely. It's very, very special to me, this ring. It's interesting because, to lead up to MLSE, that Grey Cup kind of marked the end of an era, because about 2 weeks after we won, the decision was revealed that, the Argos were purchased by MLSE. It kind of came as a bit of a shock to some of us. Thankfully, though, I was able to keep my position as a special projects coordinator at the time. However, it wasn't very easy. I was transferred over from marketing to ticketing at MLSE. I have a great deal of respect for the people of ticketing. I have a lot of great relationships with people of ticketing, and I will always be forever grateful for working with them. But not to sugarcoat this, the job wasn't for me. I knew that sales was not my cup of tea, and so I just kind of helped the ticketing team with some of their roles and everything, and I did multiple different tasks, helping them with their Argos game day stuff, helping them, I was kind of just working beside them. I didn't really but I wasn't selling tickets necessarily. So, and I kind of knew that it wasn't for me, and I realized I have to find a way to leave this department. I spent a year trying, all at work, and then I was thankfully I have connections to Mr. Larry Tannenbaum, who is one of the owners of MLSE. He owns 25% of the company, so he's with Kilmer Capital. The other the other shares are owned by Bell and Rogers. And in 2019, late 2019, that is, I was moved from from ticketing into marketing, and I started in December 2019 at Bay Street. So I was at West Campus at Coca-Cola Coliseum previously. It was Ricoh Coliseum at the time when I was moved there. It is now Coca-Cola Coliseum. But I moved over to Bay Street and to Scotiabank Arena, and for about 3 months, I was very happy working on the 6th floor with 120 marketing colleagues, most of whom I still don't even know to this day. I was on the digital team. I became a digital content specialist, and COVID then hit in March 2020. And we were all forced to work from home for the last 2 years. And that was when I really started to publish all my articles. I started to really, publish, I did 3rd and 5 with James Wilder, 2017, Argos, East Final. I did the 5 years of BMO series, and I did most of all that article on recently, my story living with working in professional sports and living with autism, which is the one that I'm the most proud of. And I will always be forever grateful for having such a phenomenal support, not just at MLSE, but from my colleagues, family, and friends, and network from across the world, because that article put the Argos on the world map. Thanks to all the important work that I'm doing with working with living with autism and working in sports and advocating for the community of people living with autism.
Yeah, we will touch on that. We will touch on that article in a few minutes. But just a minute, interesting thing from there. You got moved to a role, and even though it wasn't ideal, you had the right mindset. You took it in stride, you work you worked there, you helped as best you helped as best you could, and you eventually moved back to a role that suited your skills better. And it had that stuff happens, especially in sport. You're gonna like you may get roles that may require you to pivot on a dime, and the people around you are gonna require you to be successful. Doesn't matter if
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's a good point, William, that like, because like one lesson to go back to that earlier, like question on like this on developing skills, is forgiveness is like what liberates the soul too. And I mean, mistakes are always made, and but forgiveness is what always matters too. Because that represents proper leadership, and to never hold grudges. I don't hold any like ill will or any grudges, or or not burning any bridges against like my former department and everything too. It's always important to leave on a good note, or to transfer, in this case, transfer to a different department. So I kind of see it as like not going back to marketing. I see it as getting a promotion into like
Mhm.
a bigger like role, because like it was about value too, and I knew what my own value was, and like
Right.
I was worth more than where I was in ticketing, and and I'm worth like my value is being utilized, my skills are being like utilized in like the marketing department. And so that was why I needed the change. And thankfully it's been working out, and it's worked out, it's working out. And yeah, so like that's it's important to never like hold any grudges, and not file any lawsuits. And
No, no, God, no.
that only adds fuel to the fire. And so but life lessons get learned. And they like, I think everybody who was involved, like myself and the company, we all learn our lessons, and we all like are working to do better. And that's the whole like point, is to get better, and to do things differently, and to make it a more suitable environment for and inclusive for anyone, whether they're on the autism spectrum, and or have any other kinds of you know like situations that they're dealing with.
Exactly, exactly. And I think now's a perfect time to jump into that art to pump your jump into that article that you published on the Argonaut site, that told your story of your career in sport, including your story of living with autism. You go into detail about plethora of things, mainly a what the disorder really entails, and b its connection, and b it's just in connection with the Argos. What was the primary motivation, if you could nail it down to one, to put that piece together?
Absolutely. I met Doug Flutie about 5 years ago. So it was our 20th anniversary Grey Cup celebration in 2017 in July,
Mhm.
against the Ottawa Red Blacks at the time. And so Doug Flutie, just to give you some context, which I briefly talked about in the article, he has a son, Doug Jr., who is on the autism spectrum, but he has a very rare form, of it's called child disintegrative disorder, or CDD for short. And he's nonverbal. So he can't say any words, and it's a very rare and low functioning or extreme functioning form of autism. And I had a conversation with Doug Flutie at that time, and he, I told him my story, that I'm on the spectrum, and I've experienced a lifetime of what I call systemic discrimination, in my like, work life, in my, dating life, my family life in a way, my friend life, not most of it unconsciously, not like intentionally, not like on purpose, like no ill will against anybody at all. It was, that was just kind of like, in my school life too, but like I was just kind of misunderstood by a lot of people. Like I talked to like Doug Flutie, about my challenges I went through, my inspirations and successes that I've, proven time and time again to like overcome. so that really was what kickstarted me, like, from getting like this article going. And as an autism advocate at MLSE and sharing my story publicly, I knew that I had to, break the ice and like share like a different like side of like my writing skills. Instead of like doing third person, I wanted it to be like first person. And
Absolutely.
it's funny because like you would think that first person is a little bit easier to write, but it's actually the opposite. It's a lot harder to write than any kind
Oh
of
yeah.
so I took the the opportunity to write down some notes and just to like I worked with Justin Bob and at the EDI team, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team at MLSE, and big shout out to Justin Bob for collaborating with myself to put this article together. And he did a phenomenal job laying out like 5 different segments on the article. And yeah, it was really like autism inclusion in the workplace is a big problem. It is, I mean, it's getting a lot better these days, but there's a long way to go still. There's a lot of unemployment and underemployment in the workplace. And people who, like, if for someone like myself who has had the proper resources, the means, and the like support system to overcome injustices, I want to just tell the audience and not sugarcoat this and say that I'm very, very lucky and fortunate, because the reality is not everybody's gonna go through the same situation like myself. Not everybody's gonna have someone like Mr. Larry Tannenbaum around, or this and that to to help them overcome their challenges. I mean, and people, because autism doesn't necessarily care where you're from or what your social class is, whether you're rich, poor, or middle class. Doesn't care what skin color you are or what religion you're from. Autism is like a lifelong condition, that happens with people. When you meet one person, who's autistic, you met everyone who's autistic. When you have a conversation with someone who's autistic, you had a conversation with all people who are autistic, really. Just because you and I have a conversation like we're having now, William and Amanda, with someone who's on the spectrum and accomplished like myself, it may not be the same with somebody else who is much more severely impacted.
Exactly.
That's kind of where so that's really the dynamics of how I came through this article. It had to get out. It have to be read and just send an important message that our time has come for autism to flourish and to be great and to be successful, and that we're just people like everybody else, and we have very special skills. Our assets
exactly.
We could be valued in the industry, like in any sports and any kind of workplace, and benefit large corporations, and most of all inspire those in the autism community.
Exactly. You really hit the nail on the head. You really hit the nail on the head. And as someone who has autism as well, and Jesus, I think this is the first time I've admitted it publicly, other than my immediate friends and family. But man, you could not have hit the nail on the head there. It's hard to explain because it's a weird it's a weird thing to deal with, because you can be fine one day, and then all of a sudden when say that there's a job interview coming up, say that there's anything face to face and there's pressure, all of a sudden there are times where you can't function. And it's people may chalk it, people might say, oh, you're just nervous. And it's and it's like,
which is okay to be nervous.
I hate to break it to you, but I hate to break it to you, but it's more than that. It's functioning in interviews, eye contact. You go to 10 or 11 podcast episodes. Probably my eyes are going all over the place on the Zoom camera. unconsciously even, and I don't notice it. But again, it's just the way it is. It's just how the disorder works. And just talking to people, that can be a struggle too. And you almost have to force yourself to deal with it, and sort of power through it in order to be successful. But again, the importance of diversity and inclusion policies, um, get go covering this is huge. And a recent example that is awesome is yesterday afternoon, the 67s host their first sensory awareness game. So people with sensory issues, people with like more severe levels of the disorder, could watch the game in environments where it was quiet, it was peaceful, and they could have a good time. Policies like these, really make it, and initiatives like these, really make a difference towards, a fair and equitable chance of, getting a job. Because again, the unemployment numbers are for autistic adults are pretty stark. The last study I had it read at like, I don't know, 85 or 86%. And again, that's the main reason why these are so important, is because
Yeah, absolutely.
that's are not enough.
Yeah, I had the privilege to attend a United Nations networking event on last year in April. It was actually it was an event on World Autism Day, or just a week after, about work inclusion in the workplace. And so it's definitely a big problem, not just in Canada but around the world. Like, I was able to listen to an autistic girl from Kenya. I was able to listen to like an autistic person from Morocco, and an autistic person from England, and I believe that, and there was one who was like, nonverbal from the United States, and the moderator was from Denmark, and she was like diagnosed at the age of 50, apparently, or just before that, I believe. And so it was really eye-opening, and like, and just like surreal to see. And as a global, like travel person who has been to like many countries around the world, like I understand like autism is a global epidemic. It's like it's in every country pretty much. I think like 1% of the population is like autistic, and they're diagnosed, and there's many millions of people who are not diagnosed. And like one of my favorite celebrities, Melanie Skies in England, is like, in her early 50s, and her son's autistic, and then she was recently diagnosed as autistic, and she did a whole podcast on that, on her story on like being diagnosed with autism. So yeah, it really is like a global epidemic, and it's an issue that has to be like it's an issue, I'm saying, for like like the workplace to like take note of that, like more have to be included, and utilized better for their skill sets and everything.
For sure. So we're down to our last question. So like, thank you so much, already, just being so open with us. It's really great to hear just your side and like what you experienced. So in June 2021, you were appointed to the board of directors for the New Haven Learning Center in Toronto. How did you get involved with the organization, and what duties do you undertake to impact the organization and the surrounding community?
Great way to end off this podcast, and in a very
not quite. There's a bit of a curveball at the end, as we've seen in the few shows, but not yet.
All good. All right.
Always.
Yeah, great question. So I got involved through a former colleague in ticketing, as a matter of fact. Kind of, ironic to say that, considering that ticketing wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but it was actually a really good colleague of mine at Coca-Cola Coliseum, who, had a meeting with Sandra Hughes, and big shout out to Sandra. She's like the executive director at New Haven. So her and I have a very really close relationship. She was working with my former colleague at a Marlies game to try to get tickets and everything, and that's how I went over one October morning in 2019, and that was when the whole thing like started really. Like and then after about a year and like of working from home and everything, like Sandra and I touched base, and they saw my writing, my articles, and my successes in MLSC, and that I'm an autism ambassador and then I'm a world traveler, and they wanted me to represent on their board of directors as an actual autistic person. They were like trying to expand for more diversity, and they wanted an actual autistic individual in a leadership role, and so they figured, well, who better to appoint than Mr. Paul Waldgerman? He has a great track record. He's like an MLSE. He's like in a very prestigious role. So let's bring him on board. So that's kind of how it happened, and I'm really thankful and honored to work with a bunch of really prestigious people on that board of directors. And one of my I'm still relatively new to it. We haven't necessarily had an in-person meeting because it's all been happening during COVID, so it's kind of difficult to do meetings sometimes virtually. My role, though, is to learn about the adult program at New Haven Learning Center. So we just recently, I think, signed a lease for a new property for the adult program in Etobicoke, and so I was in on a couple of meetings, to have these discussions, and I'm still really in the learning phases too. I mean, but my job is to like listen and to try to ask questions and to try to like understand other people's point of views too, which is really also a good point, because from earlier questions, understanding other people's perspectives is very much key. Knowing who your audience is, and being compassionate to what other people are going through, and be there to support them if they happen to be struggling. And listening is more key than like talking. Really, it's about like understanding too, and tolerance too, tolerating other people's opinions and perspectives, even if you don't happen to agree with them or like them. You still have to get along with them and hear them out, and work with them, even if they can be a bit tedious to deal with sometimes. But I'm really blessed to be involved with New Haven Learning Center, and I have 2 years on the board with a 3rd-year option, and proud to represent as an actual autistic leader and leading by example.
That sounds like a great role. Although you haven't been there for long, it sounds like a great opportunity to further expand your skill set and impact the community that is near and dear to your heart. But look at Paul. This was awesome. To hear about your career story, how you live your life too. I have not come across many individuals who have autism like myself. So having you on the show is both an honor and a privilege. But as is tradition at the Speed My Counsel podcast, we'd like to give the guest the final say in the show. So you could say whatever's on your mind. You could say anything you forgot to say during the course of the show, or you can use it or you can use it as an excuse to shoot the breeze for a few minutes longer. So Paul, thank you so much again, and the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Well, I guess I want to just say thank you to the audience for listening, and I think I've said pretty much everything I wanted to cover. I can reveal some really fun facts perhaps to end off this podcast. And so one thing I can reveal is, so I happen to be in this beautiful office here in my condo with all this memorabilia. So behind me is the shot, the Kawhi Leonard moment in Game 7. And I had the honor and privilege of winning a ticket to that game. And I happened to be there when Kawhi made the shot in Game 7 against Philadelphia. And it was undoubtedly the greatest moment in Raptors history, the greatest shot in Raptors history. It was no disrespect to the NBA Finals moment, but it was bigger than the NBA Finals. I know I'm a bit biased, but I was I was there with my friend. He said to me, like, Paul, get your phone out right now. There's 4.2 seconds left. It's going to be, Vince Carter deja vu all over again. Although this time Kawhi is going to make it. And sure enough, he shoots the ball. The 4.2 seconds left. He releases it. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. The place is quiet, and all of a sudden a roar comes up. It starts it gets so loud in there too. It was like the whole place exploded. It was like an earthquake. It was insane. The atmosphere, the energy in the building at that moment.
Absolutely nuts. And that is an incredible way to end off a great podcast. Paul, it was once again just an absolute pleasure. Thanks again.
Likewise. Thank you very much, William and Amanda, for this opportunity, and really thrilled to speak with the student council of sports management of Brock this evening.